What's happening, everyone? There is huge news coming out of Arsenal. Arsenal are linked with Rodrygo from Real Madrid. This could be the exact signing that club need to take them into the next level. Now, when this news broke, I immediately thought I need an Arsenal fan to help me go through this and understand exactly what it means for their future aspirations next season. The man that immediately sprung to mind was Harry Symeou from the Chronicles of Aguna. Harry's a dear friend, an Arsenal season ticket holder, and a great orator. So let's get into it. Please welcome Harry Symeou onto the channel. Harry Symeou, thank you so much for joining me, mate.
Thanks for having me, mate. Pleasure.
Always a joy to hear what you have to say regarding Arsenal. And I think this is a huge window for Arsenal, isn't it? Because everything that we've learned about Arsenal over the past, say, half a decade, Arteta's Arsenal, I think it's now judgment day. I think now this Arsenal team under Arteta, there has been progress. There has been, in fact, unquantifiable progress. And that's almost the problem. This Arsenal team needs a definition. It needs a defining moment. And the way that you're going to get that is by making sure that you do excellent work in the window. We're hearing Rodrigo, Real Madrid. What do you make of that one?
Yeah, I mean, of all the wingers that Arsenal have been linked with, that's the one, isn't it, that probably makes you most excited as an Arsenal fan. I think for Rodrigo, it's interesting because we know that he prefers to play from the left-hand side, but obviously at Real Madrid with Mbappe there and Vinicius Junior, who's made that position his own for such a long time, that isn't always possible. So he's had to make do playing on the right, and there have been rumblings that maybe he's not entirely happy with that. There were rumors that he was maybe a little bit or feeling a little bit underappreciated under Carlo Ancelotti. We're hoping that Xabi Alonso's arrival doesn't make too much of a difference in that, and that he still might be open to a move away. Financially, it would be tough to do. There's no doubt about that. It's Real Madrid that you're dealing with. You don't feel like there's a great need to sell, but he's a needle mover. And I always say to people, when you get to this stage that Arsenal are at now, where it's just about taking that final step, which is often the hardest step to take, recruitment becomes harder and harder because now there's a
Yeah.
much smaller pool of players available to you that are actually going to improve you and take you to that next level. You don't want someone, with all due respect, on Trossard's level or Martinelli's level. You want someone that improves you, that takes you over the line. And that's where it's really tough. And with a select few players out there that can actually make that difference, it becomes harder and harder to improve your team, I think.
And I think you're absolutely right. I think the term that you used there was move the needle. Rodrigo does that not only because he's an incredible footballer, Brazil international, but because of his experience. Like as good as this Arsenal team are, there isn't enough silverware within the ranks, and that is applicable to the manager and to a lot of the players. There isn't enough top tier silverware, and sometimes what you need somebody to come in, and obviously he's devastatingly brilliant on the pitch, but bringing somebody like Rodrigo in. You know, when you go away to Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League, he knows how to win that game. He's not going to be overawed. And having him around the dressing room before the game can be huge, can't it? Like that knowledge, that nous, that experience, that know-how, worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, for sure. You need that in a team. You need that in a successful team. And as you say, Arsenal don't necessarily have it in their manager. I think they've tried to keep players around the club maybe a bit longer than they should have in terms of what they were offering on the pitch for that reason. Jorginho's obviously left now, but a big part of his role was being a kind of secondary coach and helping out and supporting in that sense. Experience, he's won things. And you get the same impression as to why maybe Zinchenko was brought in and why he's been kept around despite not playing much recently. Gabby Jesus was one of the players that you looked at and thought, winner, bring him in. Obviously, injuries have been a big problem for him. So this Arsenal team, in a lot of ways, are having to find their way towards success without necessarily having a great deal of experience to kind of to guide them in those difficult and rough moments. I think you learn along the way. And I think one thing you can never take away from Arteta and his side is that they learn year upon year. They are learning lessons. There's no doubt about that. But for me, they're missing that extra bit of quality in the final third. Players that at the drop of a hat, click of a finger, can win you a football match. Rodrigo is certainly one of them. And I think during a season where injuries were a big problem and maybe there was an over reliance on some of our players to produce week in, week out, I think we started to realize and learn maybe who is actually top level and who's maybe just in that tier below.
And surely now, Harry, like I think you seem to you present it all so well, mate. This is why I completely agree with what you're saying, but also this is why you're like my go-to Arsenal. Genuinely, you're like when I need a feeling of an Arsenal fan. The reason why I come to you is because I just think that you hit the nail on the head here. The reason why certain players have really worked out for Arsenal, and I think the obvious example to use here, Declan Rice. The reason why Declan Rice has been such a brilliant player for Arsenal and one of the best midfielders in the league and in the world is it's the recipe is so simple. You went out into the transfer market, you spent a fortune, he cost the big bucks because he was proven, he was obviously destined to be an elite player. He had done it at the top level for England, he had won trophies at West Ham, and he was a proven Premier League player, proven top tier player. That strategy has worked really well for you. Declan Rice has been your best signing, certainly over the past, what, decade at least? It's a strategy that you just now need to redeploy a couple of other times. And look, there have been some other good signings, don't get me wrong. But you know, these kind of, I don't know, the Kai Havertz, there was jeopardy, Jorginho, jeopardy, Zinchenko, jeopardy, Gabriel Jesus to a degree, jeopardy. Declan Rice, there wasn't. And I feel like the sensible thing for Arteta to do here is to go for a player where there's always a chance, of course, there's always a chance it doesn't work. But realistically, Rodrigo is a wicked footballer and will be brilliant for Arsenal and will elevate that front line of Mikel Arteta's options by a country mile.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think different stages of the process, and I know a lot of Arsenal fans hate hearing that, but different stages of the process require different approaches, right? So at the beginning, when you're picking up this team that's essentially on the floor, as low as Arsenal had ever been in recent memory, really, really struggling, it was about building for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And you're going out and signing players of a certain age profile, of a certain cost, because you're not in the Champions League, so you're limited with regards to what you can do in terms of the way Arsenal operate. So you do all of that. But once you get to this stage, only needle movers make a difference, and needle movers cost money. Declan Rice cost a hell of a lot of money, but nobody talks about that because he produces week in, week out and delivers all of the time. You can always rely on him. You know what you're going to get out of him 9 out of 10 weeks. And that's brilliant. Now you need that in the attack. And the only player in Arsenal's front line that you can say is almost a sure thing to deliver pretty much every time he takes to the pitch is Bukayo Saka.
Yeah.
And I think Bukayo Saka is at a level now where even when he's not having the greatest game all round, he can still contribute. He's got that about him. But you look on the left-hand side, and I think we got by for a while because if Martinelli wasn't doing it, then Trossard would do it and vice versa. But in a season where I think both of them suffered from a dip in form, where Trossard was being asked to play at centre forward at times, where Martinelli was being asked to play on the right. I think it shone a light on the fact that they're not quite top tier. And we know, as much as I like Kai Havertz, and we've had debates about this a lot, he's not the most clinical goal scorer.
Mm.
Brings other things to the table, but he isn't the most clinical goal scorer. So that's the next piece. You need a goal scorer and you need another top winger. Now, Arsenal will probably feel that they can make the numbers that they need to make by bringing in multiple players, maybe in that bracket just below, but relying on them to share the role. I mean, for example, if Sesko comes in at centre forward, which is all the talk right now, you're talking about a striker that isn't that proven.
Mm.
But Sesko and Havertz sharing that burden and responsibility, maybe it's enough. You don't
Do,
know.
do you do you think it's enough, Harry, or do you think that's a risky strategy? Because everything that we know about Arsenal is over the years, over the Arteta years, Arsenal will always score enough goals. You know, you probably have what at various points half a dozen players that will score in excess of 10 to 15. That's a lot. But it isn't
Yeah,
about that, is it? It's about those moments. It's about being away at the Bernabeu, being away at Paris Saint-Germain, being away at the Nou Camp. It's those moments. It isn't about can Kai Havertz and Sesko score 15 each? Of course they can. A couple against Brentford, a couple against Brighton, a couple against Bournemouth. But it comes down to that moment where you get one chance to put the ball in the back of the net and you do or you don't. Surely that's why you need the proven and to spend the big money.
yeah, for sure. I completely agree with that. It's about the moments. And I think if you score a couple of goals in a game where you win 6-1, you're stat padding to a degree, right? It's about having those players that can do it on limited service, that can do it on a night where they're not playing maybe at their best, where the team is struggling, that can pull a rabbit out of a hat. And Arsenal, for me, don't have enough of those. You're right to make the point about the goal scoring because in two of the last 3 seasons, Arsenal have broken their Premier League goal scoring record. The great Arsene Wenger's records
Yeah.
have been decimated by teams with Thierry Henry and Robert Pires in them and Freddie Ljungberg and Dennis Bergkamp didn't score as many goals as what Mikel Arteta's side have scored. But the thing is that when it's not going well, when you're having those difficult games, you need those top tier players. And Arsenal, for me, as I say, don't have enough of them. Sesko's a risk as well. He is a risk. He absolutely is a risk. But I'm looking at him more and more closely now that it looks like that deal might be more and more likely. And I feel like he's got the right attributes. It's just a question of putting the puzzle together. That's the final bit. And,
Mm.
for me, if you take a bit of a gamble on the striker, which it looks like Arsenal are going to do with Benjamin Sesko, then you need to bring in a winger that's a sure thing. You need to bring in that high level of quality in your forward line. And I'm not fussed whether you go proven striker, prospect of a winger, or if you go proven winger, prospect of a striker. As long as you get the outputs you need, then I'm fine with that. So we're going to have to wait and see what they manage to do.
I think that's really well put. Did you see? This is gonna surprise you, but I'm about to mention, perhaps for the first time in my entire life, Little Wayne or Lil Wayne. Apparently, there's a song called "Let It All Work Out" that has been placed upon Rodrigo's Instagram story, which would suggest "Let it all work out." He's kind of standing there gazing at an empty stadium. I think he's I think he's going to happen. Like I'm reading between the lines here. I think it's going to happen. He also said something. I think he was talking about where he likes to play, and he said, "Look, I can play on both wings. I just don't really particularly want to play as a centre forward, but I can play on both wings." That's got to be music to your ears, isn't it? Because it means that he can back up Saka as well. You know, if Saka's out or whatever's going on, not only can he elevate your opposite wing, but he can play across the entire front line, as he's mentioned. He doesn't particularly want to play up front, but he can do it. Like this to me, looking at it from the outside in, Harry, the Rodrigo signing just seems to work on every single level. It's just a great signing if you can get it over the line. Do you feel like you will?
I'm a little bit on the fence, but not because I don't think that Mikel Arteta will want him, or not because I don't think he's a good fit. I think Mikel Arteta gets a bit of a rough ride at times, Rory. Like he sat throughout the January window saying, "I need a striker." Arsenal don't get a striker. All of a sudden, it's Mikel Arteta's fault in the eyes of the wider world. So I think there'll be a willingness on his part for sure. He was asked about it in a press conference a few weeks ago directly, and he didn't say, "Look, we're going after Rodrigo." You wouldn't expect him to, but he didn't shut it down. Nobody at the club that day was particularly keen on shutting it down. I think Arsenal want to do this. I just wonder if financially they're going to be able to pull it off because it's not just about the big transfer fee you're going to have to pay to Real Madrid. It's about the salary as well. And, I would push back on Arsenal if they were to come out and say, well, we couldn't afford it. We couldn't make it happen. What's the point in being back in the Champions League every year? What's the point in going to the latter stages? What's the point in making record prize money in the Premier League with the TV rights deals going up and up every year if you can't increase your spend in line with that to make you competitive? Winning brings profit. And I think this is a no-brainer of a signing. He'd work from the left-hand side, I think, predominantly at Arsenal. But as you say, that being able to play on both wings thing is massive. We've got a manager in Arteta who's so big on versatility. Why wouldn't he want a player that could come in and could service his team on either side and hopefully bring that bit of stardust they need?
Yeah, and I think this could be it. Overall, Harry, just to get your feelings on like last season, it was slightly anticlimactic, slightly underwhelming by the end. Next year, do you think it's fair to say this? I know that you're very sympathetic towards Arteta and fairly patient. Do you think I'm correct? This team needs a defining moment next season. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it is fair, but I think for me, we've kind of gone past the point. Like people are obsessing over the trophy thing, right? And obviously, trophies are what we play football for. I'm not seeking to downplay that, right? We need to win silverware, but I think then you've got to start thinking about, okay, what would be satisfactory? What would be a satisfactory outcome? If winning the Carabao Cup was to happen, I can bet you there'd be people out there that go, "Oh, look at Arsenal, big moment. They've got over the line. They've won a trophy." I don't necessarily see that as a bigger achievement though than going to the semi-final of the Champions League or pushing Manchester City to the final day in the title race. Do you see what I mean? I think there are levels, and I think Arsenal are building towards the very, very top level. And I think even if they were to win a trophy, which to a lot of people would be like, well, they've done it now, they can take that next step now and appease them. I think for a lot of Arsenal fans, there'll still be a feeling of, well, we're ready and we're here for the big ones. And I think we've got into a world now where, trophies are important, obviously, but the trophy that you win is also going to say so much about where your club is at. Look at Tottenham. They've just won the Europa League. And in any other year, that Europa League will be really built up and they'd be lapping it up. And I'm sure the fans are enjoying it and all the rest of it. But people will tell you now the Europa League's diminished in quality because there's no Champions League dropouts.
Mm.
And Ange Postecoglou's been sacked, which again, raises the point of how important and how significant is winning the Europa League. If you're talking about Champions League, it's a different ball game. Same with the Premier League title. So I think the two domestic cups have been devalued quite a bit in terms of the way they're viewed. And I'm not saying I wouldn't want to win any of them or I wouldn't enjoy winning any one of them, but I think for me, Arsenal need to achieve one of the big ones for people to be united in saying Arsenal have got to that destination now. They're finally there.
Mm.
Winning one of those is not going to appease everyone. I just don't think.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Very interesting window this one for Arsenal and Harry. I really do appreciate you finding the time to go through it all with me. Really, really grateful, mate.
Thanks a lot, mate. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Always an honour to have you on.